Okay, so who are you? What's your business, and what do you do?
So I am a wedding planner, and I've been doing this now 10 years. My company is Arizona Wedding Planners, and I had started it originally as Affordable Wedding Coordinator, and then I rebranded about 5 years ago to Arizona Wedding Planners. Yeah, that's what I do. I help couples get down the aisle. I do all sorts of stuff that I could probably write a book realistically. Just so much, that I've seen and all types of different family dynamics. And every wedding's different. So it's a really fun job.
So that's awesome. How do people find you? Like on Instagram or your website?
Great question. My website is www.azweddingplanners.com. And that's with a S, so it's actually plural, so azweddingplanners.com. I know it's tricky to say. And then Instagram it's Arizona Wedding Planners, and it's actually like Arizona written out. So it's Arizona Wedding Planners. I probably should have shortened it, but I didn't. So here I am. too late now.
Yeah, that's set. Okay, great. So can you tell me like your personal business story, like how you got started and then your journey to where you are now?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I was actually a teacher. So I taught first grade for a year, second grade for a year, and then fourth grade for 8 years, which makes me sound very old now that I'm saying it. But I was I was teaching, and I loved teaching, loved the kids and the community and the families. And I was getting married. I got married in Michigan, and I needed somebody to just run the day. I didn't want a full-blown planner because I was already super organized and detail-oriented, but I needed somebody to just run the day for me and line everybody up and decorate and, follow the diagram and everything that I had already done, and I couldn't find anyone. So I ended up hiring my DJ's sister, who did a lot of the business side of things throughout the planning. And I just said, hey, would you want to make some money? And she ended up running the day for me and did an amazing job. And she was just such a lifesaver for our actual wedding. So one night I just thought, you know what? I bet there's people out there like me who don't either have the money for a full-blown wedding planner, or they don't want a full-blown wedding planner, but they need somebody to just make sure that everything goes smoothly on the day and everything is perfect, and that if there are issues happening, that there's somebody to just be there to handle it and pick up the phone and deal with it. So I thought, okay, I'm just gonna, what should I name it? And I literally just thought, okay, well, if people are Googling, first of all, I didn't even know the actual title of what I was trying to do was. So I was like, person who helps on a wedding, person who's not a wedding planner, but they like run the show on the wedding, So anyway, turns out it's called a day of coordinator. Okay. Learned that first. So, we're talking like I knew nothing, basically, right, besides the fact that I loved love. I loved weddings. I loved, couples. And of course, I love weddings. It goes without saying. But I didn't really know what to do in terms of starting a business. So I learned it's day of coordinating, or being a day of coordinator. And so I thought, okay, I'm just going to name it Affordable Wedding Coordinator. And that way, if people Google, then hopefully they'll come across.
First.
Yeah, they'll come across and look up my website. So I did just one of those old school like Wix websites with the advertising on the bottom, because I wasn't going to invest a ton of money in this, this
right.
business.
You didn't
thinking
know it was going to go.
Yeah,
anywhere.
I was just like, well, I love the idea of it. I know I'd be really good at it, but if it fails, it fails. I still have a full-time job. If it doesn't, like, okay, cool. Then I get to help people, have amazing weddings. So right. I did the little, old school Wix website. I got some coupon for business cards, got some basic business cards. And I started this company, and thankfully, I did start charging, really low, just because I didn't even at that time. I mean, now we're talking 10 years ago. So weddings were completely different. So now day of coordination, being a day of coordinator, that's very common across the board for people that don't have full-blown wedding planners. People always say, oh, at least get a day of coordinator. Oh, at least make sure you have someone on the actual day to run the show. So, it's much more mainstream now for people to know what that is and know the difference between a coordinator and a planner and so on.
I see.
So basically I, started charging really low just to get my foot in the door and get some clients and
like experience. And
get some
it
experience, figure it out, see, just kind of build my portfolio up, get some pictures on my website of actual weddings that I actually did instead of just generic, random pictures
like
I took off Google. Yeah.
Photos.
Stock photos. Ones that were my actual weddings. So I charged really low, and luckily people took a chance on me. And I was really honest from the get-go too, just like, hey, I'm a teacher, but I have all these skills, so I'm super new to this, so just kind of bear with me.
But your natural skills being that you're already a super planner. And
exactly. Type A, kind of a little on the assertive side when things go wrong. And just, people can tell too when I think they generally have a sense for if like somebody cares. Like, okay, is this just someone's trying to make a couple bucks, or do they actually care that this is my wedding day and I need to trust this person, and I need to make sure that whatever happens that, they do want me to have an amazing wedding.
Right. And you already understood that because you had a
exactly.
wedding.
I was
and
just a
knew
bride.
what you wanted out of it. Right?
Yeah. And I kind of had that, I just got married, so I've been through this very recently. And so I feel your pain, type thing. So I could really connect with these brides. And I did have a lot of good ideas too from just, spending countless hours reading wedding blogs and wedding planning and ideas for decorating and all this stuff that was just so fresh in my mind. So, so I think that kind of helped me, get my foot in the door at least, with just all I needed was just a few people to take a chance on me. And then once I did, well, let me tell you, my very first wedding I ever did, I didn't know, this is how like ignorant I was to all of this, but it was an Indian wedding. And so now looking back, it's like, oh my gosh, I should have probably researched it a little more and really got into what that really meant. But yes, it was, just complicated, and it was beautiful and wonderful, but a lot of fun, beautiful cultural elements of, we had just the bright, gorgeous dresses, and the music was so fun, and it was such a happy, I was hooked at that point because I'm like, wow, like this is amazing.
It's like an experience.
Yeah, it was such an experience, but it was also like so much work. Like, like, wait a minute, what did I charge? Like, this is crazy. I'm doing this much work for, not enough, but.
So you had to match your prices to what you were actually doing.
So that was a big learning experience for me. Like, okay, I need to be a little bit more clear in the language in terms of like what people are getting, how many meetings they're getting, how many phone calls we have, just really outlining that instead of just, oh yeah, like
I do this.
I'm available, and then all of a sudden they're, calling me multiple times a day and multiple emails and so on. And that's okay. But, it needs to be clear. Yeah. And it needs to be fair.
Yeah.
So live and learn, so a lot of it was just trial and error. And
so it was just kind of organic. Like,
exactly. It was like, okay, well that worked, that didn't. And, and kind of stumbling through it, I guess. But, I had just people that I worked with in those very first few weddings that were just, wonderful photographers, videographers, florists, venues. And they were just like, oh my gosh, you're great. Are you available this day? Because I can give your information to this bride. And that was really where things really took off, because the vendors themselves started, connecting me to people and speaking highly of me and saying, hey, Tina's, she's new to the industry, but she's awesome. Give her a chance. And they trusted, someone who might have been in the industry longer, older, more experienced, but they're saying, hey, I've worked with her,
Right.
she's going to go above and beyond for you.
So referrals from people that
Exactly.
were established in the business really
Yes.
helped a lot.
Exactly. And now, now 10 years later, I've grown and changed, and a lot has happened since those first beginning weddings. I mean, now I've done, realistically, I'd say 150 weddings, somewhere within that range.
And you've done some like celebrity weddings also.
I have. I can't say who because I
Okay.
have an NDA.
Okay. But you have done
on
them.
those, yes. But I have done celebrity weddings, and then just some high profile weddings as well, with just some big business owners, and I work at really, really nice venues, and I do a lot of luxury weddings. I mean, I kind of do it all. So I do everything from backyard weddings to full blown $150,000, just everything to the nines. And then of course everything in between. So
right.
yeah, and they all have their their different things that are that I love about each
that
one.
are like
so
good or bad.
yeah,
or whatever.
exactly, pros and cons. But yeah, so I'm taking a long time to explain that question, but
No,
yeah,
it was a really good answer.
yeah,
I mean,
it was a lot of it's just if you have a passion for something and in your heart, like, I'm going to be good at this. Like, I don't have the, exact answers, and I don't have the book on exactly how to grow this, but I know I'm going to be able to, and I believe in myself, and I'm going to ask the questions that need to be asked when I don't know the answers. I think that anyone can start a business on anything. And a lot of it's just, I know it sounds cliche, but like fake it till you make it. I just got myself one great business suit, and I wore that business suit at every wedding I worked because I'd only had one, It was like, okay, but nobody knows,
Right. But then you grew into
yes,
that.
Exactly. And then I was like, oh, well, now I can get more, and now I can, really wear different outfits. Like,
yeah.
It sounds silly, but I just needed like a couple people,
to trust you
me and give me a chance. And,
right.
And then it really did it skyrocketed. I was, ironically, I had been doing, coordinating weddings. I only did day of coordination for the first couple of years just because I did continue to teach. So I could only work weekends. And then, of course, I did meetings, but a lot of them, it was helpful because a lot of my couples had jobs that were Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. So they needed to meet on the weekends. They needed to meet during the night.
So it fit everybody's schedule.
Yeah, so it fit for the most part. I mean, I did have some kind of, some doctors and nurses and things that work night shift that we did have to get a little creative on. But I would, worst case, I'd take a substitute day. I'd get a substitute if I had to, or, I would take a half day or whatever if it needed to be a meeting.
That's really inspiring, I think, for a lot of people that you had a full-time job, but you're doing this on the side and still were able to grow it and turn it into what it is.
It was kind of crazy, and I was actually getting my master's at the same time as well. So I don't know what I was thinking. But I guess I didn't, I knew that I was going to love it, but I didn't expect to I was just hooked. Like every inquiry that came through, I was like, yes, I'm available. Yes, I'm available. Yes, I'm available. And I just kept taking more and more and more on. And then it kind of steamrolled from there because the more I took on, the more business I got, so.
But I mean, were you ever overwhelmed where you have to turn people down?
I probably should have. And that is something that I've kind of grown and learned, that, I can say, honestly, there was one year where I did 35 weddings in 1 year.
Like in one season?
In 1 year. So it was, so
seasons.
in a full year. So it was 2 wedding seasons because, our season goes basically, January through May with, March and April being the busiest. And then it kicks back up when our weather gets nice, with us usually starting at the end of September, beginning of October, and then it goes October is crazy, November is crazy, and then it, of course, starts to die down around the holidays. But yeah, within 2 seasons, I mean, I had so many that it's like I was forgetting people's names. I was like, wait, what date is it? What's happening right now? And I knew that they were all things we had talked about, but I hated that I couldn't pull the information up.
So that was a lesson.
It was too much. Lesson learned, because it was like I wasn't giving the best of myself.
You're spreading yourself too thin.
Way too thin. So then I learned, okay, at that point I did decide, and kind of after a couple years of doing just coordination, I had my son. And so I have a 9-year-old, soon to be 9-year-old son. So I had him, and I thought, you know what, I'm just going to go all in with the wedding planning because I love teaching and it was amazing. And I do, I do miss it sometimes, but it was so many hours, and at the end of the day, I didn't want someone else raising my child. So,
Right.
Wedding planning really was flexible for a mom because I could do both. I could be a stay-at-home mom and I could work and do what I loved. So it was just an obvious transition to me to go all in with my planning company. And I did have enough of it built that I wasn't, just leaping in and just hoping it was going to work.
Right. It was already functioning.
Yeah,
you already had the clients.
Yeah, exactly. I was already grown enough that I felt like I was going to be okay. But that was a big leap, because it's like, oh my gosh, like I hope it continues to grow and doesn't just flatline. And, but it was like anything worth doing, you just kind of have to say, I'm all in, and at that point, I was very lucky because I had the support of, we have just an amazing family, grandmas and just support systems. So that really helped so that I could have, him being watched and I'd be off at work and it was like, yay, I get to go to work, and so then I actually craved working more because I did love, being there with him. But then I'm like, oh my gosh, I need adult interaction
like
too.
And,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So then at that point I started taking on partial plans, which is, kind of it's day of coordination plus kind of helping them with more behind the scenes, aspects. So helping them build their vendor team, helping them, design things instead of just showing up and decorating on the day of. I was the one who was, taking kind of their general ideas and then saying, okay, now this is who we book. This is what we need.
So
this is the contracts.
More planning.
Exactly. A lot more planning. And then once I kind of had that down, I stepped up to the full planning. And so full planning is exactly what it sounds like. You're doing pretty much everything. Of course, the couple has to make some decisions, but it tends to be where they're a lot more hands off and I do a lot of it. So, and that's really fun too, because I do get to, I have a lot more creative freedom with that.
That's awesome. So what advice would you give to, people starting a business in Arizona or, specifically in the wedding industry? What advice would you give to wedding professionals?
That is a great question. I think the biggest advice would be, it's so hard because I have a lot of it. My biggest advice would be that you really want to, do your research and figure out who your clientele is, because a lot of the reason that, when I was affordable wedding coordinator, I was booking a lot of, affordable weddings, which were great, but then I really wanted to make that jump and that transition to, not super affordable weddings.
Right. You want to get paid.
Yeah, exactly. So I would start out from the get-go knowing like, okay, what do I want? What's the end game here? What do I want? Who are my clientele that I'm really trying to, what's my niche here? Because I had to kind of stumble through that a little bit and then learn, 5 years into it, oh my gosh, I'm worth so much more.
Yeah.
I'm really selling myself short and having people tell me that over and over and over, like, what? Like, you're experienced. You've been doing this 5 years now. And I kept thinking, but I'm still new. But, I was really, I was sabotaging myself, because I was thinking I'm still new. I'm still not one of the bigger ones. And I'm not one of the ones that a lot of people know right off the bat. So it's like, have some confidence in what you can do and know your worth.
Yeah, I was just going to say, know your value as soon as possible.
Know your value. And of course, it makes sense if you're just starting. You can't just say, oh, well, guess what? Everyone has to pay me a ton of money.
Yeah,
that's not how it works.
You have to earn it, but
you
don't
have to earn
wait
it, and
too
you
long.
do have to build your portfolio, and you do have to, get that trust from other vendors and venues and people and build that experience, because that really what you're asking people to pay you for is your expertise, your skills, and your experience. So you have to be able to stand by your rates and say, okay, this is why I'm charging what I am, but also, you just have to know what is my end goal. I think my biggest advice would be to really be clear about your goals from the get-go instead of just, oh, I have an idea. Oh, well, now all of a sudden I'm really busy, but I guess I'm just going to keep my rates the same because I've been booking those. And
you mean your goals as in like how many clients you take on?
Yeah, exactly.
How much you
like
charge?
How many weddings do you want to do a year? What kind of clients do you want to be working with? What kind of, do you want to do more full plans? Do you want to do more partial plan? Do you want to do more coordination? And really, pursue those and be just more clear with yourself about, what would success look like to you,
and how would you enjoy that?
And how do you balance work and life and have it be a mix of both that you feel is good for you. So if I didn't set those goals for myself, and so that was a big learning experience. But
you also learned to be more specific or picky about your customers.
That was that's another piece of advice. That's a great point. I was just saying yes to everybody just to get my experience and get those pictures, to build a portfolio and look how many weddings I've done. Look, this picture and that picture and this video. And, I had so many bad gut feelings, sometimes in chatting with people or, even just in the tone of an email, I'm not sure, but I just kept saying yes. And
how did that
my
work
advice
out?
is, not well, really not. So my advice is if you have a gut feeling on somebody or a couple or a vendor that's, even asking to work with you or whatever, just go with your gut because you will pay for it if you don't, and you'll pay for it 3 times over. Well,
and like in terms of being picky about your clients, there are certain class of people, or I don't know what you would say, but there's generally like a demographic that I feel like you figured out that works for you, like
exactly.
that you like.
Exactly. Right? And that is so true where, I have done, weddings where people are literally just getting, a catering company or, just whatever food they can find, whether it's their grandma's, and their aunts or whatever, doing we're just making a whole bunch of food and we're just going to have some tables and, we just really need to make sure that candles get lit and, and tablecloths go on and all of that. And everything sounds so easy. And then it's like, oh my gosh, it's not that easy, there's always, backyard weddings are great, but they are more complex and there's a lot more room for,
drama.
Yeah. For things to go wrong, a toilet backs up or the police get called. I've dealt with that a lot. I'm like an expert at police now because I've had so many weddings. They're blasting the music in the backyard. Somebody calls, somebody complains, police show up. And I'm like, please, just like 2 more songs. I promise we'll turn it down.
Know how to talk to the cops.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I know I'm a little off the topic here, but
you're good.
I've done those and they've been great, but then, it does get to the point where it's just a lot of work when people are kind of doing everything DIY. Everything is just, oh, okay, I have to do this as cheap as possible. There is something to be said for, you get what you pay for. And so, when it comes to, even just hiring a catering company or a venue or anybody, there's a reason why they cost what they do because they have excellent service and they do what they say they're going to do. And the food is hot and there's servers who actually are doing what they're supposed to be doing instead of, just dropping off food late or, texting on their phone or whatever,
So if brides want their wedding to go well, they have to be willing to pay what it costs for that to happen.
Exactly. And that's sort of with anything in life. It's like, of course,
true.
You can do everything cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
You can do it cheaper for pretty much anything. You can buy cheaper stuff. You can hire cheaper staff, whatever it is. But then it's
they
like,
aren't that great.
Exactly. Yeah. So I've learned, there is something to be said for that quality vendors, quality venues, quality food, quality everything. And, I don't refer people that I wouldn't have at my very own wedding, so yeah. So I'm really picky about who, I will send my couples to, because it's, it's important that their weddings are amazing and that I trust them and that my couples trust them, and heaven forbid I just take a chance and then all of a sudden I'm the one, it's like, oh, they didn't deliver when they said they were going to deliver, or, oh, we were supposed to have a meeting and they canceled on me, the day before, or whatever's happening,
cultivating those relationships with people you can rely on.
Those relationships are huge, and they have to be proven time and time again. Which is that professional relationship, where it's like, okay, I've seen this vendor in, trying times, whether it's raining and we're having to deal with that, or we're having a very emotional bride, or we're having, just situations come up, people run late, car accidents happen, things get lost and so on. And these vendors can stand their ground and be like, we're figuring it out. We're going to fix it. Everything's great.
Nice.
Here we go. We're moving forward, So yeah, that trust is really important. So
awesome.
Yeah.
So, what funny stories do you have from weddings that you've done?
I have a lot of funny stories. Some of them, let's see, some of them I can't tell because, they're just like, oh my goodness. Yeah. But the ones I can tell, let's see, kind of one of the, I'll just spout off a few of them. There was one time where, the kids are always hilarious because they're so unpredictable. You don't know what they're going to do. You don't know what they're going to say. And so I had this one little ring bearer. He's probably, 6 or 7, and he's stomping down the aisle. So angry. Like I've never seen somebody so mad in their life, carrying the ring, and he stops halfway down the aisle. And he turns around and he goes, "Did I do it right, wedding planner lady? Did I do it right?" And I was like, yeah, keep going. And then he stomps forward all mad. And then he turns to his mom and he's like, "You said if I walk down the aisle, you give me all my Halloween candy. Where's my Halloween candy, Mom?" Like,
oh my God.
So it's like, everybody's laughing. Yeah, everyone's laughing. And luckily, the bride was so sweet and so cool, but it's just like, what? But things like that, that's like, you can plan it for an entire year.
Everything's perfect.
Everything's, and you can't control people.
Yeah.
I've had fires happen. I've had, crazy monsoons, that are like coming in at the last minute. I've had couples, I had an elopement in Sedona once, where I had just gotten them, it was probably 25 people, something like that. And there was children, at this wedding, and we're in, actually at Enchantment Resort in like one of their little sections in Sedona where it's kind of like away from the resort, so it's kind of, in kind of a wood, pretty area, kind of away from the hotel, but you wouldn't think that by looking into pictures, because all you see is the gorgeous mountains and this tall grass. And, so anyway, I get everybody, okay, cue everybody, music's going, okay, we're all good. I'm standing there, and this is at this point when I usually am like, I can breathe for a second.
Everything's just going to go.
Everything's good. We're all good now, and everything's decorated, and, that's kind of the moment of like, I can breathe now. And I look up from my clipboard, and I see, not even kidding you, probably 15 javelinas surrounding us in a circle, closing in on us. And I was like, oh my gosh, like they're in the middle, they're crying, they're saying their vows, it's this highly emotional moment.
And you're being hunted down.
And I can see them because they're in the tall grass. And once I start seeing like a couple of them, I start seeing the other grass like movement, and I'm like, oh my goodness, what do I do? Like because I know they charge, so I went over to all of the parents that had kids standing next to them. And some of the kids were like, how kids are they? They roll on the ground. They're doing whatever.
Yeah,
they're just little kids, 2-3-year-olds. And so I just tapped the parents on the shoulder. And I said, can you pick up your kid? And they're like, why? And I'm like, and I start pointing, and they're like picking up their kids. They're all picking up their kids, and the couple's just going on, doing their rings. They have no idea. Yeah. And I think the groom did. Like
you saw it out of the corner of his eye?
In looking at him, I saw him like getting a little nervous, but he wasn't reacting. So I'm like, well, if he knows, okay, well, it's his call. He can he can say something at any moment,
Right.
So yeah, he So I get all the kids picked up, and I'm like, okay, that was step one, now what? And so he says, the groom goes, hey, babe. He's like, you know how you always wanted to see a javelina?
Oh, no.
Yeah. He's like, and they're like just about to be done. This is like toward the end, because it's a quick ceremony overall, it's 15 minutes. He's like, you know how you always wanted to see one? He's like, look around. And her face, the pictures are so funny because she's like, ah! There's so many of them. There's so many. Like, she's like, we gotta go. And then their friend was marrying them, and she's like, say it, kiss. This is where you kiss. Yeah, and she was just like, let's get on with it,
Oh,
and they did their
God.
kiss, and we just like booked it out of there. But thankfully, they were just chilling. They were
just watching.
It was the weirdest thing.
They were probably looking for like kids to stray off, or maybe food,
or maybe just seeing what was happening. But
good thing you saw that.
Yeah, I guess. It could have been way worse because one of them could have charged, and the other ones decided it was charged.
That would have been a disaster.
And I don't even know what I would have done. Yeah.
Run.
So my heart was racing for sure.
Wow.
So that was a crazy one. I had another kind of funny one where the grandpa was marrying the couple, and this is a common thing now. People have their, a friend or a family member do the officiating of the ceremony.
Okay.
And so the grandpa has his mic lapel hooked up to him.
Lavalier. Yeah.
Yeah. And so he has it hooked up, and then, the DJ, whoever's running the sound, says, okay, this is the button you click it on. This is, how you click it off, and so on. And so teaches him, fine, everything's normal. And all of a sudden, wedding's about to start, maybe, in 10 minutes or something like that. So there's a good amount of people there. They're all sitting in their chairs. Grandpa must have clicked the button.
Oh, no.
Without knowing it. Or maybe he did. I don't know. But all of a sudden, we hear, this, like, stream of water. So he's in the bathroom.
Oh, my God.
So he's peeing. He's in the bathroom. He's going pee. And I'm like, I kind of was like, what is that? Like, is something spilling? Like, it took me a second. And then he started, like, talking to whoever was in the bathroom.
Okay.
And he's like, oh, it's so effing hot, blah, blah, blah. And they got us out here in these tuxes. Like, what were they thinking, having a wedding in the beginning of September? And he's going off.
Just
he's
talking
swearing.
crap.
Yeah, he's swearing. He's like, oh, my effing, and I'm just, at this point, I'm running because I know he doesn't know his mic is on.
Right.
So I'm running to the bathroom. I'm trying to knock on the door.
Because you can't go in the
yeah,
men's
exactly.
bathroom.
I'm in the men's. So then I'm like, and I know I'm supposed to be lining everybody up, so I'm like, I'm knocking on the door. I guess he doesn't hear. I don't know. I'm not going to like walk in there. So I quickly run to get a groomsman. I'm like, hey, like you need to go in there and tell him his mic's on. Tell him his mic's on.
Yeah.
And while the groomsman is like, about to just go in there, the grandpa starts talking about the groom and how he's so broke. I can't believe she's marrying this guy. Like, does he even have a job? Like, just like,
oh my God.
going up. Yeah. So like, it was right in the middle of like a sentence, the groom was like, hey, your mic's on. You can hear the groomsman in the background say it. But he was just going to town on this guy and how he's a total loser. Like, just like, I don't know what she sees in this guy. Like, yeah. So I'm like, okay, so we're gonna start the wedding now.
Just
like,
pretend that didn't happen.
Yeah, so here we go. It was like this awkward, like, as he's up there saying, like, I'm so happy you found each other, and da-da-da. Everyone's looking at him like, we know you don't. We know how you really feel.
Especially the groom or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and he heard everything, too. It's like cringeworthy.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I said, you plan all year long. I can't predict that. I can't do anything about it, but am I going to jump in immediately and handle it? Yes, I probably should have just gone in the men's room, but I was worried it was like the urinals or something, and then I was gonna
yeah, exactly. That makes sense.
So I was like, just find me a man, any man. Another one was I had another wedding in Sedona, ironically, that was a ranch. It was one of my earlier ones. And my husband was actually helping me work it because at this point I didn't have a staff, now I have a staff and assistants and people, who lead planners, associate planners, and the whole thing. But it was just me at that point. So I pretty much brought my husband along and was like, hey, you're my assistant, So,
Yeah.
so he came along, and right as they had just said their vows, they had just kissed, and I guess one of the kids must have opened the pen. They had a whole bunch of llamas. They had this ranch. They had all these animals, and there was a pen with 12 llamas. And I don't know how it got open, but all of a sudden they are everywhere throughout the property. They just spanned out so fast. And the ranch owners were like, everybody gather them up. And the ranch owner was like, they're my babies. They're my babies. I need my babies. Yeah, and we're in the forest basically, so it's quickly get them before they get too far,
What
and
is
it's like,
up
what?
with these animals,
Yeah. So yeah, me and Jason are just trying to
get llamas, catch the llamas.
Yeah, we're catch them up, and we have our arms out, trying to pin them into their back in their gate and stuff, and it was just craziness. And there's all these wedding guests trying to help, and
are there photos of this llamas everywhere?
Oh yeah. Wedding guests just trying to get them back in the cage. That was one. And then let's see, I've dealt with a lot of drunken grooms, a lot of drunken groomsmen, and trying to sober them up really quickly. So that's always a little comical, because I'm usually dousing their heads in cold water, putting them in the sink.
Wow.
Yeah, just putting the cold water on them, trying to sweat it out sometimes. So having them run around a bunch,
just do laps.
No, really, I'm not joking.
I believe you.
I've put trash bags on groomsmen, had them run
trash bags on them.
Yeah, because it makes them sweat.
Oh my god.
Sweat it out. Coffee. Shots of
sense.
espresso, and really just sweat it out. Get yourself to cold ice, whatever you have to do, and coffee is the way to go, and to do it quick,
because they're just so nervous.
They're so drunk,
okay.
both. Yeah, they might be nervous, or they might just they're partying, they're celebrating with their guys, and all of a sudden it's oh wow, you can't stand, you can't talk, you can't even read right now, you're really 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 drunk. So that's one of my
That's hilarious
specialties, I guess you could say. I also help grooms a lot write their vows 2 minutes before they walk down the aisle, because they know what they want to say, but they can't necessarily
so
put it into words.
Really
last minute, okay, what else do you like about her? Tell me anything. Tell me something, and I'm trying to do it all nice, and
and thinking about what the bride is gonna feel about it.
Yeah, so some of my grooms, I've helped them, with that, or even just plain written it for them, if they're one of the drunker ones, I'm just gonna write this, and I'll write it really big, so they can
see it, because they're all messed up. That's hilarious.
And then I'll tell the other, the best man, stand right behind him, just to give him a little,
So funny.
Yep, just hold him up a little bit, Yeah, definitely lots of funny ones. But yeah, I had one of my fun ones was this groom hated this one Maroon 5 song. I don't know, it was
I relate to that.
He told every single person who interacted with the wedding, I hate this song, make sure this song doesn't get played. He didn't like it. Fine, okay, no big deal, and so the bride reached out to me 2 months before the wedding, and she's like, hey, we're gonna do a flash mob with this song.
Oh my god.
I learned it, the photographer, the videographer, and half the wait staff,
just to mess with him,
learned this song. All of the guests, she had made a YouTube, sent it to all the guests, told them to learn it, the family members, everybody. And so that one was really fun, because we got to actually participate in it, and it was so fun, but it was it was hilarious because, you know, she's thinking like it's going to be this big prank and it's going to be hilarious, so fun. And he was so mad. He was so mad. Like he was just turning red, like watching everybody. And he's like sitting there, like not laughing at all, which makes me laugh. You know, you're supposed to laugh and think it's funny.
He's like, no, I hate this.
He was really mad. Yeah, he's like sitting there with his arms crossed, like turning red, like staring at his, you know, wife.
That's even funnier.
His new wife, you know, like, what did you do? You know, so the wife like blamed it on her mom and was like, it was my mom's idea. Yeah.
Yeah.
And things like that. It's everybody's different personalities and, you know,
right.
So you just, and weddings do tend to make people, you know, a little emotional, a little high. Everything is, they're just, especially if they've invested a ton of time and energy and money, and everybody is just so high strung. And so I feel like sometimes I'm more of like a therapist or a counselor, you know, where I'm just, you know, I'm hugging people, letting them know. But you're
good at that too.
Yeah, so you kind of you almost have to have that. That's, I guess, another piece of advice. You have to have that, you know, business side of things where you're learning how to run your business, because I started it really not knowing. I didn't know anything about SEOs and yeah, exactly. And starting LLCs and taxes and business taxes and, you know, all of that you can learn.
Right.
But, you know, you also have to, you know, make sure that you always have those connections, because that's what people remember. And I've had people send me, you know, just wedding guests, send someone, you know, that I might have just connected with, or, you know, just in a sweet moment reached out and, you know, given them a tissue or something like that, and they remember it, you know. So it's like, oh, so and so, you know, I'm a guest that was at one of your weddings and I'm getting married, and, you know, they found out who you were and they remember you. You know? So I think that human connection, it's like business stuff just sort of comes, you know, through trial and error and research and learning, but just don't lose sight of that connection and how powerful it is, you know. And so if you want people to, you know, continue to refer you, I mean, that's the cool thing about weddings, is that there's so many people there, you know. So I've done weddings of, you know, 4 sisters, for example. I've done every single one of their weddings, and then now, you know, they're friends that I've now been, you know, and they're bridesmaids that I know really well, and then they have sisters, and, you know, and just kind of
a constant audience of, like,
exactly, people watching you.
Yeah, watching you who are, you know, seeing you do your job and see that you're good at it. And
exactly. Even if it's just a guest attending a wedding and they're like, oh, wow, that, you know, people will come up to me and be like, oh my gosh, this wedding's amazing. Like, this is so awesome. Like, you've done a great job. And that melts my heart, but that's not why I'm doing it. But it's nice that they can see, you know, like they're enjoying the wedding.
And it's appreciated.
Yeah, exactly. And they'll get my information from, you know, the mom of the bride or whoever else, you know, if they ever need a planner. And so weddings are, you know, there's so much business, you know, and I'm one of those where it's like, I have interns right now. And a couple of my interns are like, well, you know, I'm thinking of starting my own planning company. Like, are you okay with that? And I'm like, go for it. Like, there's so many people getting married, and we have just the beautiful views and, you know, Southwestern vibe, and we have just incredible venues here, and, you know, it's just a great place to get married. So we have all kinds of destination couples who get married here because of our weather. Here in Arizona, because of our weather. So it's just a constant stream of couples getting married, and so it's like, hey, go for it. Like, me and a lot of other planners, the venues have like these wedding planner fam weekends where they invite us, and we get to go and stay there and experience a lot of the, you know, the amenities and whatnot.
That's
so
nice.
That when we do have couples looking for venues, we can say, oh yeah, we've been at that restaurant, we've been at that spa, we've been, you know, by the pool, and the service was great.
What's good.
Exactly, yeah. We can really speak to it because we've experienced it ourselves. So,
interesting.
But you would think like, oh my gosh, like, that's so crazy, because you're all there and you're all like doing the same job. Like, wouldn't that be strange? But it's not, because all of us kind of all have our own, little specialties and own niches and, different clienteles that we work with and whatnot.
Right.
So you're
not really directly competing in
exactly,
like a cutthroat way.
And there's so many couples that get married here that it's not like this, there's only a few and everybody's going after the same ones. Like,
Right.
There's planners who are amazing that, they only do full planning across the board. They don't do day of coordination. There's companies that specialize in day of coordination. There's companies that do all luxury. They only take 10 weddings max per year because they're, this is what I want to do. I want to give 110% to each of my couples. And they're so involved, high, high financial money, type thing of wedding that there's just so many moving pieces.
But they're still limited in how many clients they can take on. So there's still opportunity in every aspect of it. In a way.
Exactly. So I tend to be more in the, kind of middle range, so most of my couples budgets are, within this is an average, but it's usually between like 30 and 60,000 for their budget.
You've done much higher end weddings, and I feel there are things
but
about
as a
that.
Norm, exactly. So, but on average, I would say most of my weddings, there's always outliers. But on average, most of mine at this time are around, 30 to 60-ish. In that, general budget.
Okay.
Yeah, but there are planners that specialize in, 200K and over, and it's like, hey, more power to you, Yeah, exactly. So we're all pretty supportive of each other, and
that's awesome.
Yeah, and it's really a good community overall, and for Phoenix being as big as it is, the wedding community is very small. Like most of us have all, we've worked together at some point in terms of vendors, so
I mean, I've worked with you a couple times, and we've have the
worked
same
together,
photographers.
Exactly. It's a very small world, and most of the time when a couple says, for example, they hire me and they've already pick their vendors, most of the time I'll be like, oh yeah, we've worked together before, oh yeah. Right. So people kind of all know each other, for the most part, and the planners, we are really surprisingly, pretty supportive of each other. I send planners people, they send me people, and so that's a big compliment to me, that they'll be like, oh, I'm booked on this date, but go to Tina, she's awesome, to get a referral from a planner is like extra cool. So
nice.
Yeah, so I'm really happy that it's not that you're gonna have to fight your way in, and it's gonna be this like, oh my gosh, these planners are trying to block new people from getting into the business. Like, it's not like that at all. Like,
that's great.
Most of us are like, yeah, come on in, there's
plenty to go around.
Work. Yeah, plenty of work, there's plenty of couples, plenty of weddings, and they're just gonna keep on coming because the next group
and more people are moving here.
Exactly. More people are moving here, and weddings, especially now, because of COVID, 2020, so many people didn't get married, or they were like, we know we're going to get engaged, but we're going to like wait and see what happens. Now the wedding boom is insane because all the people that had to postpone are now ready. And
do you remember the wedding I was going to do? I was going to shoot a 360 video for. It was Sabrina's best friend. I believe they're doing the wedding in October now, so that's all happening.
And like postponed to a new date.
Yeah.
So now, my fall is very busy now because I have those postponed weddings that got pushed to fall that are now happening, and then plus the normal weddings, the typical weddings that happen on top of that. So
and those people coming from California and all these places they're trying to get out of because of lockdowns or whatever.
And we do here in Arizona have a lot more of a loose, looser mask policies, looser, travel things, and people, as compared to, for example, I have a lot of brides coming from New York and Chicago because they're like, we want our wedding to be.
We just want to have a normal wedding.
Yeah, we just want to have as normal as possible, but also safe. But we don't want it to be like where people feel like all you feel is this COVID, and it's so strict. And so the weather plus the fact that we are very, venues do stay safe. They always, they sanitize, and their staff is usually masked and so on. But
it's reasonable.
Yeah, it's reasonable, but it's not it's not the same as in a lot of other states right now that are like still even like on certain kind of lockdowns, or they can't even eat, inside of a restaurant, So they're like, yep, sign us up for Arizona weddings.
Yeah,
so,
I mean, it's beautiful here too.
It is, absolutely. And people want those pictures.
Yeah. So tell me again who you are, how people find you. What's your website and Instagram, or how they get in touch with you?
Yep. So it's Arizona Wedding Planners is the name of my company. And then my website is www.azweddingplanners.com. So it's AZ Wedding Planners with a S at the end because it's plural. And then .com. And then my Instagram is Arizona Wedding Planners, all written out. So ARIZONA WEDDING PLANNER, and then an S at the end. I know, way too long.
What's the ideal way for them to get in contact with you?
Probably website.
Website?
Yeah,
okay.
Most of the people will, find my website, and then there's a contact page on there, and then they'll just reach out to me through that contact page. And then my email is on there, and my cell phone as well. So,
all right. This is Christina Wojciechowski.
Yes.
Thank you very much for
Thank you
being
for having
on the podcast.
me. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. This was fun.
Yes.
All right.
All right.